Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to day 3 of West 2022 and the Information Warfare Pavilion. You're sticking in. Just a half day left of this thing. We've got 2 great speakers for you this morning. First one up is Mr. Vince Capral. He's the Principal Senior Advisor to the Commanding Officer, Hopper Information Services Center, and the Office of Naval Intelligence. He's a Senior Executive Service in the Senior Executive Service. Became a Dysel in October of 2016. He began his civilian service in 2009 at O&I. He was also out here in California as the director of our Naval Information Forces West Detachment, Tammy North's job right now. So he's not unfamiliar to the folks here in this area. He was a Navy intelligence officer, had combat deployments, and like many of us, started out as a SWO, as we all do. So with that, Vince, the stage is yours.
Good morning. Can you hear me all? Oh. I was doing great until the IWCs came. Now I can't lie anymore. My sincere thanks to the Navy League and AFCEA for inviting me to speak this morning here at the Information Warfare Pavilion. It's my honor to represent the Office of Naval Intelligence led by Admiral Copley and Hopper Information Services Center. Today I'm going to share with you just a little bit about the Office of Naval Intelligence, and again, my passion, the Hopper Information Services Center. Both play a key role in the strategic competition and are critical to the intelligence and the IW communities. I'm going to explain how they fit in. For those of you that may be unfamiliar with the Office of Naval Intelligence and how this fits into the national intelligence community, I'll address that. And I'll provide a brief context into how we fit in across the centers and as the overall O&I H3 command. I wear 2 hats as a Navy senior. I'm the Principal Senior Advisor for Information Technology and Information Resource Manager at the Office of Naval Intelligence. You may be asking why I'm here today. Something's going on in Ukraine, I'm not quite sure. So the boss looked around the table, and as we all do as JOs, I unfortunately smiled and became the lucky person to come to San Diego. My bio that was too long did talk a little bit about some of the things that I've done in the past, but just before I showed up at Hopper, I was at the headquarters of the U.S. Marine Corps and got to work the hard target strategy for the Commandant of the Marine Corps, as well as his joint capabilities documentation. So that experience just before I came into the IT center has really focused some of these thoughts down for me. As we all know, the strategic environment is changing and growing more complicated. But we also know that resources continually are going to be limited and further stressed. O&I is going to need to continue, as it has since 1882, transforming itself to do more against the Navy's strategic competitors in the current financial environment that, again, if I ask for a show of hands, how many people think the DoD budget's going to go up? Okay. I think we all agree. So we're going to have to do something we haven't done in a long time. We're going to have to start thinking again. And we're going to have to start innovating again. And we're going to have to be smart about how we do those things. O&I has evolved many times throughout its history to meet new global challenges. And in my mind, we can immediately look back at how O&I pivoted and created the Kennedy Irregular Warfare Center during the global war on terrorism. Coming from the post-Cold War era, we shifted immediately and were able to take the expertise and that subject matter knowledge and focus it on the global war on terrorism. Today, we're going to have to do the same thing. With the CNO's guidance for the Navy to deploy forward to ensure the rule of international law remains in place, we have to ensure our strategic competitors cannot coerce or intimidate our allies, our partners, or most importantly, our fleet. O&I will continue to do this, understanding that resources will be limited and transformation will need to occur. There are 4 areas that O&I can look at in order to achieve this transformation. Is O&I's talents and treasures aligned with the highest priority missions? Can O&I operate at quantum and hypersonic speeds of strategic competition to provide decision advantage? How are we using technology to expand and deliver our mission outcomes? And how are we recruiting, developing, and retaining our workforce to succeed into the future? As we work to answer these questions, our commander's objectives have been clearly set forward. We have to deliver decision advantage to our fleet commanders, to Navy leadership, our national decision makers, and in the maritime domain. We have to deeply understand our adversaries. We have to learn everything we can about them, and we have to predict their next move. O&I is no longer in the business about talking about history. We're in the business about talking about predictive intelligence. Finally, we have to take care of our team, and there are 4 parts to that team: our civilian, military, contractors, and most importantly, their families. We're in the midst of a golden age from an intelligence perspective. When I started in the intelligence community over 30 years ago, we spent a lot of time focused on collection, annually collecting any data we could to analyze, looking through a soda straw, hoping to find something great. Many in the room, some of them with gray hair, some of them with no hair, some of us a hybrid, may remember the Iraqi Scud hunts through the desert. I always wanted more data, but now collecting the right data in a timely way is what's critical. Today we're awash in data, not just data that we're hoping to collect, but frankly, data that our competitors are intentionally placing into the information environment to confuse us and throw us off track. Our focus has to shift to predictive analysis, and we need more and better ways to conduct this predictive analysis using automation, machine learning, and artificial intelligence. We can no longer rely solely on our nationally treasured SMEs, their spreadsheets, their notes in their pockets, and their old PowerPoints. We have to get into the digital age. I want to stress one other point. O&I can have all the data and all the SMEs that are possibly wished for. But if we do and we don't disseminate that data to our Navy in a format that the fleet and our partners can use, we failed, and we know that. If we are clever with our analysis, precise with our dissemination, we can create an information advantage that can be turned to by our senior leaders and hopefully help defeat our adversaries. When I was on a Knox-class frigate, a 72-hour analog ATO was processed and often sent by mail so we could plan. Today, I might offer on a good day against Russia or China, our strategic competitors, our time event horizon has shifted to 7.2 seconds, not 72 hours. If we're going to maintain our advantage, that's the speed that we need to be thinking about and looking towards. Decision advantage is based on understanding what information is needed, when the information is needed, and where the information is needed, and most importantly, the most efficient way to pass that intelligence. Do I send a multi-gigabyte PowerPoint that has been reviewed by senior leadership, 14 chains in the chain of command, or do I send merely a lat long, a series of digits, in a timely manner that can be acted on? As an intelligence professional, as an IW professional, I have to understand and anticipate what the commander truly needs, and I need to figure out whether that intelligence has to be sent via record traffic, machine-to-machine readable format, or even in a chat room to a decision center. That's what I'm paid to do. Deeply understanding our adversaries leads to improved fleet readiness by allowing us to deliver a more lethal, better connected force and to better synchronize lethal and non-lethal effects in space and time. Understanding the information environment, we must operate in ways that allow us to better understand and provide that value-added predictive intelligence. O&I brings that to the fight and appropriately engages with fleet units to ensure success. It also allows the Navy to deliver and integrate a larger, hybrid force, now using both manned and unmanned vehicles. I'll now give you a little bit more background on the Office of Naval Intelligence. It holds the distinction of being the oldest member of the intel community, and as a Navy Service Intelligence Center, O&I collects, analyzes, and produces maritime intelligence and disseminates that intelligence rapidly across the spectrum from strategic to tactical decision makers. By examining threats and risks to the worldwide maritime environment, O&I supports maritime security efforts and contributes to the worldwide common operational picture. O&I has a world-class capability, and it's a result of hard work and innovative thinking by thousands of military, civilian, and contractor personnel over the decades. If you were to come to O&I, you would see some things have changed. When I first walked into O&I, everybody looked like me. They wore white shirts, dark suits, dark ties. And they all had just come in. Most of them were post-Vietnam veterans who had years of service to their career before coming to the Office of Naval Intelligence. Now, if you look out at O&I, you'll still see some of those people. And every day, it is truly humbling to see somebody struggling in to get to work because they know they've kept the corporate knowledge in their area of SMENIS. They've probably had the ability to retire for a long period of time, but they're dedicated to that mission. Our core strength, though, is these talented people, and we recruit them from across the military intelligence community, law enforcement, academia, research laboratories, and nearly every federal agency within the federal government. The workforce at O&I today is no longer a retired male military officer. It looks like the rest of society, and if you looked at our demographics, we're proud to say that we finally brought diversity to naval intelligence, and we continue to strive to do that as we continue to strive and find the best talent available and the talent that'll innovate and keep America safe. Our globally deployed personnel serve alongside our embedded with the fleets. They provide complementary long-term trend analysis and expertise in support of their current operations. They will, if you give me a little bit of leeway, bring the richness and the exquisiteness of the national intelligence community directly to the operating forces to help provide that SMENIS, those things that we take for granted as second nature at O&I, and bring those to the young first tour officer or enlisted who's sitting their first watch, so we can help train and balance that young ingenuity with common sense and a long historical view. We're organized into a unified structure of 5 commands in Suitland and 2 detachments, one at the Navy War College and another at the Pentagon. On the slide, you'll see the commands. We'll start with what everybody always thinks of first when they think of O&I, the Nimitz Operational Intelligence Center. This center provides operational and strategic analysis of events associated within the maritime domain and predictive term intelligence to ensure operational commanders and national policymakers have the right focus in the right place at the right time. Nimitz overlays extensive maritime industry experience with cutting-edge operational intelligence analytic capabilities and delivers unique civil maritime expertise I previously mentioned. The Farragut Technical Analysis Center anticipates and analyzes rapidly accelerated foreign maritime scientific and technical research with the goal of preventing technical surprise. In addition to this all-source capability, Farragut exploits adversarial material and conducts signal intelligence and threat modeling and simulation. The center is also home to our unique naval mission of the National Maritime Acoustic Intelligence Library. The Kennedy Irregular Warfare Center that I mentioned earlier analyzes special and irregular warfare forces and capabilities and supports operations and planning to meet the need of fleets, Naval Special Warfare, Naval Expeditionary Combat Command, Department of Defense, and national agencies. The command blends a unique all-source analytic reach-back capability with an additional ability to deploy intelligence operators forward alongside naval operators in the special arena to confront asymmetric challenges around the globe. My favorite, no offense, Captain, the Hopper Information Service Center operates the globally sensitive compartmented information communications, or SCI, backbone. It's used for the Navy ashore and fleet units, and it's critical to the success of deployed forces and naval intelligence operations. For the past several years, Hopper has been engaged in consolidating over 50 disparate Navy SCI communication nodes under a single umbrella to further strengthen the associated security framework of our most sensitive data and networks, while at the same time replacing legacy communication equipment. In support of the O&I mission, Hopper paved the way to move many of the terabits of current and historical data from the pockets of those SMEs that have been doing it for decades into the cloud. Hopper also provides cloud engineering and hosting services to external Navy commands that have SCI requirements. These cloud services are aligned with the latest intelligence community and Department of Defense cloud-first enterprise IT mandates. Our newest center, the Brooks Center for Maritime Engagement, addresses the Navy's priority strategic information requirements concerning security threats to our global maritime environment. The center works to deepen professional relationships with other services and agencies, as well as build partnerships with maritime-related commercial industry, scientific research centers, and academic institutions. The Navy War College Detachment provides tailored, integrated intelligence analysis and expertise to wargaming, applied research, and planning to prepare the Navy and the Joint Force for the most complex operational and strategic planning events and challenges. One that's special to all of our hearts. O&I has a detachment at the Pentagon, the Chief of Naval Operations Intelligence Plot, CNOIP. This center provides intelligence to Navy leaders to support daily operations, acquisition planning processes, and strategic and policy development. There's a special place in O&I's heart and in the history of Navy intelligence for CNOIP. On the morning of 9/11/2001, 8 of the people lost that day were members of CNOIP. They were shipmates that never left the Pentagon and continue to stand the watch. As we observed the 20th anniversary, we honored their sacrifice, as well as the sacrifice of others who lost their lives on that day. But to showcase the resilience of O&I, CNOIP immediately reconstituted, and the next day carried on the watch, taking along 8 of our shipmates every day, 24/7, 365. Our global presence includes hundreds of additional personnel in more than 40 locations worldwide who leverage the capability, capacity, and services of O&I. O&I endeavors to deeply understand the current and future scientific, technical, strategic, operational, and tactical Navy and maritime environment over the next 20 years. Our integrated assessment of foreign naval capability informs U.S. acquisition community, strategic planners, the fleet, and other Navy and DoD customers in minimizing or eliminating technological or strategic surprise. We are expert in naval weapons and sensors to include ship and submarine launched and coastal defense anti-ship cruise missiles, ship and submarine launched land attack cruise missiles, ship and submarine launched ballistic missiles, ship submarine launched surface to air missiles, torpedoes, torpedo countermeasures, mines, mine countermeasures, advanced weapons, and technology directed and kinetic energy weapons, explosives, propellants, guidance and control, propulsion systems, naval traditional and super guns, and guided ammunition and chemical and biological weapons. If that was a mouthful and dragged on, those are just a few things that we're asked to do on a daily basis. We also have a tightly focused foreign material exploitation program that supports prioritized U.S. Navy requirements for the development of countermeasures to integrate into current and future U.S. Navy programs and systems. We produce all-source scientific and technical intelligence reports on capabilities, performance, and vulnerabilities of foreign C5ISR sensor systems and networks. This includes reports on military-related research, development, testing and evaluation, production proliferation, characteristics and performance of any foreign systems, and threats or any extreme threats to U.S. forces in the maritime domain. O&I, as a naval intelligence leader, is an integral part of the Navy information warfare community, which is focused on the integrated employment of the Navy's information-based capabilities to degrade, deny, deceive, or destroy an enemy's information environment, or enhance the effectiveness of friendly operations. Our efforts are aligned under the information warfare community pillar of assured command and control, battle space awareness, and integrated fires. We support all warfare efforts, but are most closely focused with the information warfare community. In order to have the right conversation, we must understand how the strategic environment is evolving. The Secretary and the Chairman have both said China is our pacing threat. China is the most populous nation in the world with more than 1.4 billion people. That's more than 4 times the U.S. population. China is the 4th largest nation in terms of total territory, slightly smaller than the U.S. It shares land borders with 14 other nations, more than any other country. This includes 4 nuclear powers: India, Russia, North Korea, and Pakistan. Since 2010, China has had the 2nd largest economy in the world, with a GDP of almost $16 trillion in 2020. For example, the U.S. is approximately $22 trillion. China's PLA is the largest military in the world, with more than 2 million active service personnel, almost half of whom serve in the ground forces. The PLA Navy is the largest Navy in the world, with a battle force of more than 360 ships, including more than 130 major surface combatants and approximately 60 modern submarines. The PLA is supplanted by 1.5 million members of China's internal security forces, the People's Armed Police, which includes the Chinese Coast Guard, which is the largest maritime law enforcement agency in the world. As a student of history, I think it's always good to look back and review Alfred Thayer Mahan. He advocated that maritime power is defined as a nation possessing a powerful navy, a sizable merchant fleet, and a capable maritime industry and shipbuilding. According to the Financial Times, Chinese companies own more ships than those of any other nation, with more than 5,500 merchant ships engaged in international trade. And Chinese companies own or operate, or more correctly, control more ports and terminals around the world than any other country. Well, that describes some of the challenges we face with China. We must not forget that the Russian Navy is a globally deployed force that is an indispensable instrument of Russia's foreign policy. It's the inheritor of the once powerful Soviet Navy that challenged the United States and our allies in the global maritime domain throughout the Cold War. The Russian Navy is emerging from its post-Cold War downturn and is rebuilding. Today it is present and it is presenting a formidable challenge in the global maritime domain. Russia has continued to prove that it will aggressively seek to expand its national interests. For example, when Russia invaded Crimea 7 years ago, the past reverting to the present, it violated international law and the norms by which modern countries engage one another. During those years, Russia has also interfered in elections, conducted cyber attacks, and poisoned its opponents globally and in Russia itself. At sea, Russia continues to use its maritime power to harass U.S. Navy ships and aircraft, and those of our allies. It's no coincidence this week Russia has used its Navy to pressurize the Ukrainian government and to show its will to NATO. The Navy is clearly a tool of Russia's power, and its operation in the global commons mean that ONA must continue to develop and maintain a deep understanding of its capabilities and operations. Russia's Navy is clearly not a global force for the good, and it bears the U.S. Navy's intelligence community's continued focused attention. Although the Russian Navy today is much smaller than the Soviet Navy of 1980s, it retains and has improved upon its capabilities that the Soviet Navy once enjoyed. The Russian Navy is reinvesting in cutting-edge technology by developing new multi-mission platforms that carry anti-air, anti-surface, anti-submarine strike, and novel capabilities. Submarines remain the capital ship of the Russian Navy, and they serve a prominent role in nuclear and conventional deterrence. Its surface Navy consists of a modernized Soviet-era and new construction platforms that provide layered defense in addition to global presence operations. The Russian Navy will continue to invest in technology and will challenge the U.S., both now and in the future. In the strategic competition with China and Russia, our vision, once again, is to provide timely and relevant decision advantage to Navy leaders and the warfighter. While naval control of the sea is an essential predicate for warfighting advantage, our challenges are not that simple. We must advance our plan now to effectively compete with the Chinese and Russians in an increasingly contested global maritime commons and security environment. If you were at the breakfast, our reputation counts. If we back down, nations watch and allies fade. That competition short of war demands a thorough understanding of the maritime environment to include those supporting communications and maritime transportation systems that underpin our international trade and our economic goals. If you want to see where the Russians and Chinese deploy, look at where our financial data is carried over the undersea cables. It may just be coincidental, but I go off script. Maintaining U.S. naval advantage at sea demands precision, timely, relevant, and predictive intelligence across all warfare domains: information, surface, subsurface, air, space, and cyber. The rapid integration and delivery of that intelligence helps to expand decision space for warfighters in planning and execution of their operations. It also informs Navy acquisition by defining requirements for development and fielding of integrated U.S. systems and countermeasures. The complexity of the maritime security environment today is not only complicated by events and strategic competitors, but more quickly it's also being affected by the accelerating pace of technology change and the expansion of that technology and the growth of whole new fields that as younger children we never thought would even exist. For example, I could talk about quantum computing, quantum communications, quantum encryption, hypersonic weapons. You can basically put quantum or hypersonic in front of any noun, and it becomes a new technology, a new threat. China and Russia have clearly understood the importance of quantum and hypersonic technology and are investing more heavily than anyone else in the world. It's important that I characterize the context of what I mean by the accelerating pace of technology change and the implementation of new tactics with this technology. Russian President Vladimir Putin himself weighed in on the debate, saying that the use of artificial intelligence-enhanced weapons will determine the future of combat. The Russian military, he said, is heavily emphasizing autonomy across development in aerial, ground, and maritime unmanned and robotic platforms and components. For example, Russia is upgrading its operational units with the new automated control system. In 2019 Caspian fleet drills, Russian press reported that Russian air, land, and sea forces were combined into a single information space. Data on detected targets were loaded into the system in real time for the first time, and depending on the target type, the command chose the best means to attack. All information was received in real time, analyzed using automated command and control systems, and executed on without a human in the loop. Our strategic competitors have a different thought process. I'm going to transition now and speak for a moment about information technology, because it's not only important to have the technology, but to ensure the technology that we have and the secrets that we've obtained are kept safe. I mentioned earlier, O&I and specifically Hopper has to be able not only to bring the richness of national intelligence community to the fleet, but it also has to operate under the guidance of both DoD and the intelligence community. Hopper is focused at just the right inflection point to leverage the goodness of the IC and bring solid practices DoD has initiated from a security perspective. Whether it's the IC data in the IC cloud or Mars, Hopper must ensure that data can be sent to the fleet units, whether it be via JADC2 or Project Overmatch or whatever may come next. The communication means has to be in place. Hopper has to be ensured we can meet that to get that information to the customer. For those of you that may be unfamiliar, on January 19th, 2022, President Biden signed out National Security Memorandum 8. Some of the key takeaways of the memorandum on improving cybersecurity of National Security Department of Defense and intelligence community systems are as follows. The requirements for national security systems have to exceed the cybersecurity requirements for federal information systems as set forth under EO 14028 of May 12, 2021. We have to update agency plans to field cloud technology, and we have to institute zero trust architectures. If our systems are not already in the cloud and already under zero trust architecture, we have to develop a plan to implement that zero trust architecture across our systems. We have to provide multi-factor authentication and encryption for data at rest and data in transit. NSA standards are the baseline. All forms of encryption that do not meet NSA, quantum-resistant algorithms, have to be reported to the secretary level. Further alignment in cyber incident reporting and incident response has to occur. No longer can DoD components and IC components stovepipe cyber incident reporting. It now will be centralized and reported. And all cross-domain solutions require centralized visibility and rule set approval. The ways O&I and Hopper intend to address the strategic environment with the technology challenges that were just put forth is, as I mentioned, we're going to increase our focus on Russia and China and continue to ensure the organization is optimized to meet that. For the Intel folks in the audience, you know there's many different ways to organize, and there's a constant review process undergoing at O&I to ensure that we are appropriately putting the seams where we can most accept seams and focusing the analytical tradecraft of the workforce where we have to focus their most pressing needs. If we are to address and compete in the evolving strategic environment, O&I must align with our highest priorities and continue to create decision advantage by providing an effective understanding of the maritime domain, resulting in specific, timely, relevant, actionable intelligence to those who need it. We have to apply technology to expand or deliver mission outcomes. We're gathering information advantage over our adversaries using automated systems like artificial intelligence and machine learning. And AI's potential is enormous, but we fully haven't realized the potential of automation, nor have we fully addressed how we're going to use automation and when and where the man needs to be in the loop. We have to leverage partnerships that are vital in the strategic environment with China and Russia. ONI supports the CNO's foreign engagement strategy by conducting intelligence exchanges with military intelligence and law enforcement and partners across the globe, ensuring focus areas and returning on investment to support top naval priorities. To fit into this complex environment, ONI is uniquely positioned to identify and leverage opportunities with our international and U.S. partners to impose crisis defeat our adversaries when needed. Looking first, the necessity and value of international partnerships, it's easy to understand that the Navy and the IC will never be able to address all of our requirements with unilateral capabilities. I'm going to give you an example of where we've partnered and achieved great success. ONI's maritime collection strategy, named Symphony, represents a paradigm shift for ONI collections, as it realigns collections with a focus on interstate strategic competition. As such, it's clear the U.S. needs to sustain and strengthen its global influence in this area of strategic competition. Symphony combines novel collection methods and strategies with a strong focus on international partnerships to meet our defense objectives. Symphony meets these challenges by leveraging foreign partnerships with a broader framework to gain access to strategic maritime location and resident data where the United States is denied easy, routine access. Moreover, Symphony is all about leveraging ISR investment that's already planned by our allies. In exchange for ONI expertise on collection systems, integration, systems familiarization training, information technology, and data transport, we're given potential access to unique collection equipment. ONI is then able to partner data and potentially leverage over $1 billion worth of partner investment in the maritime ISR around the globe. This Symphony approach allows us to reap considerable returns on a relatively small investment in a program management, data transparent, and equipment from the U.S. side, and strengthen the partnerships under the rule of law to help counter Chinese and Russian influence. ONI has expanded our partnership with the Marine Corps and the Coast Guard as well, because we recognize the goal of integrated all-domain maritime power and influence is a team, not individual event. The Tri-Service Maritime Strategy, or TSMS, emphasizes growing military capabilities, particularly those of China and Russia, that are eroding our military advantage and undermining the rules-based world order we live in. ONI has varied the important roles to play in supporting the TSMS, including expanding partnership with Marine Corps Intelligence Activity, or Agency, the Coast Guard Intelligence Coordination Center on analysis and wargaming, investments, innovation, capability, and networks, including ISR, exercise plans, and experiments. This accelerated engagement and integration supports the TSMS across the entire spectrum of day-to-day competition and crisis and conflict. ONI plays a major unique role in expanding the capability of our government and key partner nations to manage transnational threats in the civil maritime environment. We collaborate extensively with the Coast Guard on issues such as commercial maritime trade, illegal, unregulated, and unreported fishing, piracy, and maritime drug trafficking. Our expertise on the civil maritime industry and its operations, in partnership with the Coast Guard, provide the capacity and capability with relative synergy to contest maligned actions that infringe upon free and open use of the maritime environment. ONI intends to expand mission sharing with the Marine Corps and Coast Guard when advantageous to all, and advance all-domain integrated naval power and improve our individual and resiliency and redundancy. Our efforts are closely aligned with CNO's Navigation Plan 2021, focused on sailors' readiness, training, capabilities, and capacity. With the strategic competition as our focus, we are now broadening our partnerships in wargaming, intelligence campaign planning, and better preparing the Navy and the joint force for future conflict, and to enhance the Navy as a global maneuver force executing the international rule of law. We'll also compete for the best talent to our workforce and work at retaining them. We have many paths to building and retaining a strong workforce, and offering professional development and other incentives to join us and stay with us are constantly being thrown about. I mentioned as a young surface warfare officer, I spent countless hours as an ASW officer on a Knox-class frigate fighting the monolithic Soviet Navy threat. The Yankee box ops were still practiced, and I remember one day, after objectively looking at our capabilities, Soviet capabilities, I realized that if we'd ever been called upon to actually fire on a Soviet SSBN, our chances of survival were limited at best. And I'm being optimistic on a Friday in San Diego. On the plus side, if we did our jobs correctly over those countless hours of manually tracking with grease pencils and maneuvering boards, we would have executed the national mission. Today, however, as we've heard from the previous IW and stadium speakers, our decision advantage is now challenged by the Russian and Chinese, who are totally committed and in open press have stated they're now in a rock-solid alliance to defeat the United States and the international world order. We no longer can afford manual or analog sequential processing in this age of quantum and hypersonics. Where do we as a nation and a Navy hold advantage is in our people and our collaboration and synchronicity of our intelligence and IW communities into a global force that benefits from the exquisite national intelligence community with the right framework of our analytic superstars to get that information to the tactical edge digitally in seconds, God forbid if we have to go to minutes, in a format that can be actioned on. Bluntly, the time we have to outthink our adversaries has diminished greatly, but the threat they have brought has become more complex and is striving to be just as good. As we heard in this morning's speed is life. I'm not fast anymore, so I'm hoping the new and the younger generation is bringing the speed, and hopefully we can provide a few tricks of the trade. In conclusion, the United States finds itself in a strategic competition with multiple nations, Russia and China, in an increasingly contested environment, in an increasingly complex technology race that doesn't trust, respect, or even care to hear of the rule of law. ONI's mission is more relevant than ever. We have to deeply understand our adversaries, and we have to deliver relevant, immediate decision advantage to those operating at the tip of the spear. We'll achieve this by aligning our talent and our treasure against the highest priorities as set forth by the nation and the Navy, distributing decision-making and taking appropriate risks. We have no other option. We have to succeed. Thank you again for the opportunity to speak. I look forward to taking your questions, if they're easy.
Good morning. This is Jeff Simpson from Oracle. How would you characterize your biggest challenge in cloud, your cloud policy, and specifically how it's going to work at the tactical edge?
So I'm going to answer that in two different ways. First, I'm going to answer the challenge we have with the cloud, and then I'm going to talk to you about how we get the cloud to the tactical edge. I think there's two issues. On the technology front, I think that the government is just not designed to create either military or civilian personnel who we can retain, who have the expertise to bring us cloud technology. We have super smart folks, right? But what is the average sailor or the average junior officer that comes in? They've come in with maybe a 4-year degree, maybe a 2-year degree. And frankly, they're looking for their way and they want to serve their country. But we're not able to always bring in, a computer scientist, a data scientist with a master's degree who are deeply experienced in using cloud technology. So the first side, from a technology point, a little bit challenging. To add on to that from the personnel side, I'll be honest, the IC has gone to the C2E contracting vehicle. In doing so, I think they failed to realize the second and third order effects. So Office of Naval Intelligence, we're in the National Capital Region. I used to have to worry about 1 or 2 under C2S companies fighting for the same talent that I'm trying to gain and achieve. Now I have 5 companies. And so if I have X number of people that are cloud scientists, computer engineers, electrical engineers, cloud engineers, we've just divided that pie by 5 and risen the cost point. Unfortunately, for too long, I think the federal government has relied on a monetary-only approach to gaining and keeping talent. Quite honestly, we're not going to succeed in that path. What we've underutilized and failed to remember is that people don't join and put on a uniform of any service for the money. They do it for a sense of service. So what we're looking hopefully toward in the future is finding that young man or woman, in high school, identifying them clearly, working them through some sort of expedited security process, offering to pay for them to go and get a STEM degree in one of the areas that I mentioned, and then having them do a payback tour where they go and they sit with somebody who has watched Russian submarines for the last 40 years and just think it's cool, and realize if they can do that and they can pull that in and they can put that into the cloud technology and make a difference for the Navy and the nation, they're doing something that nobody else gets to do. We don't talk about that enough. We don't show that excitement. And frankly, it's the only job that I have anymore, right? I can do all the paperwork. But if I'm not showing that enthusiasm and excitement about bringing that young generation in and showing them all the cool different things that they can only do in uniform, I failed. So that's the answer to the first part of your question. We're struggling with the second part. I'm going to be very blunt. Putting cloud to the edge sounds great. What I more see is that we're going to have a cloud, and we're going to have to figure out how we're going to take the data from those cloud centers and push them again in very, very unique ways. To get to that, we have to have data standards. And when I say data standardization or talk about data standards, the eyes glaze over, most people's head hit the desk, and they just don't even want to talk about it. So I think that's going to be a real challenge. How we figure out what is that relevant data to not only take from the cloud and figure out how we're going to put it out over the broadcast means to the disadvantaged user, but what data we're actually going to put in the cloud, because we've got gazillions of bits of data. Some of it is great, some of it is relevant, and some of it is history. One man's history, though, is another man's treasure, and figuring that out and how we keep and retain it and how we parse and send what's tactically relevant forward goes to the whole key point I started this talk with. I hopefully answered your question.
Good morning, sir. David Sadler with Tachyon Networks. First of all, as a former Knox class ASW officer, I remember the formula. 2 frigates go in, 1 come back, submarines at the bottom, that's a win. My question has to do with your comment about our adversaries' use and exploitation of artificial intelligence to let the AI do all the decision-making and engagement. How do we, as a country with a different value set than our adversaries, compete in the same stage and not compromise what we hold most close in our values?
So because of the venue, I'm going to answer your question in 2 different ways. The first way is I think you hit on the key point, right? The way that we will use artificial intelligence is far different than the ways the Russian and Chinese use their artificial intelligence to control their society. But so I maintain a good balance. The other day, being in the Navy, working with asbestos for years, and retiring and having a CPAP like everybody else because of all that asbestos work, I got a phone call from my sleep doc, and they were like, hey, we got to change the settings on your CPAP because, we got to get you to breathe right. And, fine, do whatever you got to do. Do I got to bring my machine in? Oh, no, we'll do it remotely. Okay, cool. How'd you know I had this problem? Oh, we monitor you. Oh. Isn't that a great example? In our country, that is acceptable because it's about me, the individual, and my rights and my needs. Far different than the way the Chinese and Russians are looking at it. But knowing that, I would dare say, I guarantee there's probably not some encryption on my CPAP machine, and there may or may not be a lot of encryption on Chinese and Russian means of social control that could become a boon. How many people have a dog with a microchip so they can find them? Well, if I happen to know that Timmy or Tommy likes to walk their dog every night, and Timmy or Tommy is somebody I just really want to help find a new life in another phase of their existence, maybe I track their dog. There's endless opportunities. None of these are real, by the way. I'm intentionally using these as examples to let you wander with your mind to answer that question because of the classification in the venue. I just don't want to go down that path. But I think there's great opportunity in the social control networks that the Russians and Chinese are putting in play. Hopefully that answered it in a roundabout way. Last one, yes, sir.
Good afternoon. My name is Brian Hervé. I'm with Torch AI. I'm wondering about machine learning. You mentioned a couple times the vast amounts of data that are coming in, historical data that's out there. How is Hopper in particular leveraging machine learning or machine learning algorithms to try to, I guess, number one, identify what data is important, connect the different data objects that are being identified, and using that in predictive work as well?
So the beauty of Hopper is I sit on the second deck of the Office of Naval Intelligence. If I go up one deck, I've got Nick Wedge. If I go up another deck, I have collections. If I go off to the right and up a deck, I've got Nimitz or Farragut. So I have all those analysts that have for years been tracking with grease pencil the little notes that they have in their pockets that never leave the building. Or the Excel spreadsheets that they've just carried on for years and squirreled away in a drawer. The brilliance of having Hopper at O&I is we can leverage what they understand and the critical things that they have always followed and tracked, because they knew, to use a hunt for Red October, oh my gosh, Vasily is the XO, but his wife died and the CO's wife died, but the CO's wife's uncle was the head of the... we know where those linkages are, and so we're able to now use machine learning to do that. I will tell you, we are beginning to do that, and one of our challenges is we could do that for all of Russia, we could do that for all of China, but we have to break our own paradigm, because there's things that we're finding in the data as we're sorting through that were completely unexpected. I mean, if you remember years ago, I think it was a Washington Times or Post, one of them was like, oh my God, there's going to be a bombing in Iraq. We're going to go and we're going to bomb Iraq. Why? Because the pizza delivery guys are all lined up outside the Pentagon. There are things like that we're just continually amazed that we're finding, that the smartest people that have been watching the problem for 40 years, they did God's work. They found almost everything, but there were those few little nuggets that they hadn't, and now the machine learning is showing us that data exists and how to exploit it a little bit better. Does that answer your question, sir? Again, I really want to thank AFCEA, USNI, and the IW Pavilion PAOs. If I could, I'd ask you guys to give a round of applause to the PAOs. We all take for granted that we don't have to wear a mask, but they've spent countless hours, days, and months getting ready for this. And as always, they did a bang-up job so that we can not only be here, but that we can personally network and that we can talk to friends. So thank you very much.